Welcome to the Sky Commander Flight Brief. It's your mission-ready podcast for drone pilot training and aerial insights across Canada.
From Transport Canada rules to real-world drone ops, we break it down, take you higher, and help you earn your wings. Because here at skycommander.ca, we don't just fly.
It hints there's more to it. It's a masterclass, a deeper level, maybe a philosophy or a community focus, perhaps.
It's definitely intriguing, sets them apart from just, a basic tips show. Skycommander.ca is the obvious next step. Precisely. If you're thinking about flying a drone in Canada, boom, this content is aimed right at you.
Powered by skycommander.ca.
The elite podcast for Canada's drone pilot. Okay, let's get started.
Okay, let's unpack this. The commercial drone industry is, it's just absolutely booming. You see it everywhere, right? Infrastructure, construction mapping, cinematic stuff, even just really high-end real estate photos.
For sure.
And to legally do any of that work here in the U.S., it all comes down to a single piece of paper, a single credential, the remote pilot certificate.
And that credential, that's the key to this entire deep dive. We're going to take you through the whole process of getting that certificate, which is governed by what's called 14 CFR Part 107.
Right.
Our mission today is really to cut through all the jargon, all the bureaucratic stuff, and just give you the facts you need to navigate this world. We'll cover eligibility, the exam, which is logical but challenging, all the paperwork, and maybe most importantly, how you stay legal over the long haul.
And not just here, right? We're also going to look north to Canada.
Exactly. Little comparison.
I think the stakes here are something people really misunderstand. It's obvious that, flying a drone over a huge construction site needs some kind of permission. But the FAA's definition of commercial use is so broad. It's not just big jobs. It can be something like mixing drone shots into a wedding video you're paid for, or even putting drone footage on a YouTube channel that makes ad revenue.
Yeah, that catches a lot of people. If money changes hands because of what that drone produced, it's commercial, period.
Yeah.
And you need this certification. Part 107 is the absolute starting line for any small UAS operating for business in the U.S.
So here's the part that I found fascinating, the kind of surprise perspective in all this.
Yeah.
The test makes you study some things that feel just bizarrely disconnected from flying a modern drone.
Oh, yeah.
Like you have to learn how to read these coded weather reports from the 1950s or figure out these cryptic symbols on old aviation maps.
Right.
But once you pass it, you get this official title. You're an airman, a remote pilot, and you suddenly get this glimpse into the FAA's whole history of safety. Yeah. This huge, organized airspace system. You're not just some person with gadget anymore.
You're a participant. You're officially part of the civil aviation ecosystem.
And understanding that ecosystem, that history, it's vital, isn't it? Because it explains why the rules are the way they are.
It does. And it takes us right back to the chaos that existed before all this.
The Wild West.
The absolute Wild West. If we rewind the clock to, say, the early 2010s, before Part 107 went into effect in 2016, the whole world of commercial drones was just out of control. Yeah. The tech was moving at light speed, but the FAA rulebook was stuck in the past.
Yeah, the sources really paint a picture of that chaos. Imagine you're a small business owner in 2014, maybe a videographer. You go out, you buy this cool new drone, and you want to start charging clients. You immediately hit a brick wall. The FAA just had no rules for a small unmanned aircraft that you could buy at a store.
Exactly. The only way you could legally do commercial work was through this really convoluted process. It was called a Section 333 exemption, and you needed a certificate of authorization, or a COA.
And these weren't for drones, were they?
Not at all. They were designed for experimental aircraft or big military contracts, not a 4-pound quadcopter you want to use to film a golf course.
I read that the early adopters and the lawyers, they used to joke that they literally had to pretend their drone was a miniature airplane.
They did. You had to write a full-blown standard operating procedure manual, an SOP. You'd be outlining crew roles, maintenance schedules, stuff that's appropriate for a Cessna, not a DJI Phantom. And this was just to get permission to shoot a simple real estate listing.
It's just a total regulatory mismatch.
It was. So the unwritten rule was hobby flying was okay as long as you followed these ancient guidelines for model airplanes from 1981.
Wow.
But the second you charged $1 for your work, it became commercial. And that meant the process was slow, it was expensive, you needed a lawyer, and frankly, a lot of people just operated illegally because they couldn't deal with it.
So that chaos, that's what we're calling scenario one. It just became totally unsustainable.
And that's a critical point. Part 107 wasn't just some nice idea the FAA had one day. It was a direct order from Congress. The FAA Modernization and Reform Act of 2012 formally told the FAA, you have to figure out how to integrate small drones into the airspace and create a licensing standard.
So they were forced to act.
They were. I mean, they'd been wrestling with it since the early 2000s, but that act was the legislative push that made it happen. So even though Part 107 seems like a simple document now, it was the survivor of like a 10-year design meeting. So much fighting over safety and liability.
And nothing shows the absurdity of the old system better than that anecdote, right? The paper airplane.
The paper airplane legend, it's classic. In 2015, an attorney, probably trying to make a point, he successfully applied for and got an FAA commercial exemption for a battery-powered paper airplane toy.
You're kidding. A paper airplane with like a 10-minute flight time.
That's the one. It had a range of maybe 120 feet. It couldn't carry anything, certainly not a professional camera. But because he applied for a Section 333 exemption, the FAA had to run it through the exact same bureaucratic meat grinder as, a $50,000 inspection drone.
That just perfectly illustrates the problem. The old system had no sense of scale. It couldn't tell the difference between a toy and a serious flight platform.
Every single request was treated as this complex one-off project, and that is why Part 107 was so desperately needed. It normalized the industry. It created a clear, standardized, and most importantly, an affordable path for thousands of pilots to become legal operators almost overnight.
It let the industry finally grow up.
Exactly. Responsibly.
So if you're ready to get on that path, let's walk through those first steps. The FAA is pretty clear. There are 3 eligibility requirements right in the Part 107 rules.
Yep. The first one is age. You have to be at least 16 years old.
And the logic there is what?
It's a parallel to driving. The FAA's thinking is, if you're considered responsible enough by the state to operate a car, you probably have the maturity to operate a small drone safely.
Okay, that makes sense. What's number 2?
You have to be able to read, write, speak, and understand English. And this isn't just a preference, it's international aviation law. English is the official language of civil aviation worldwide.
So even if you're talking to air traffic control in another country.
It's all in English. It's for standardization and safety.
And the third one? This one seems a bit more subjective.
It is. You must be mentally and physically fit to safely operate a drone. This is basically a self-certification. The FAA is asking you to confirm you're not impaired by drugs or alcohol, and that you have the basic motor skills and vision to control the aircraft. To maintain that visual line of sight.
Got it. So if you meet those 3 criteria, what is the very first piece of admin you have to do?
The first hurdle is getting your FTN. That's your FAA tracking number.
And what exactly is an FTN?
Think of it as your permanent FAA ID number. It's yours for life, for your entire aviation career, whether you end up flying drones or, becoming an airline pilot. You absolutely must have this number before you can even schedule a test.
Okay, so how do you get it?
You have to create an account on the IACRA website. IACRA stands for Integrated Airman Certification and Rating Application. It's the FAA's online portal for all pilots.
And here's where we need to put up the big warning sign, right? The thing that saves people weeks of headaches.
Oh, absolutely. This is crucial. When you register an IACRA and then later when you schedule your test, you must use your full legal name exactly as it appears on your government-issued photo ID.
No typos, no forgotten middle initials.
Nothing. A missing hyphen, a slightly different spelling, anything can break that digital link between your test score and your application. It causes huge delays. So get that name right and then lock down that FTN.
With FTN in hand, we're on to step 2, which is the big one, studying for and taking the actual exam.
The UAG exam, its official title is the Unmanned Aircraft General Small Exam. But like we said, everyone just calls it the Part 107 exam.
Now, you hear from people who've taken lots of professional exams that this one, it's surprisingly manageable.
It can be. I think a lot of that is the structure. It's all multiple choice, but you only have 3 options. 1 right answer and 2 wrong ones, which are called distractors.
And one of those is usually pretty easy to spot, right?
Often, yeah. One of the distractors is so obviously wrong that you can eliminate it immediately. So a lot of the time, you're really just making a 50-50 choice.
So what's the format? How many questions?
It's typically 60 questions. Sometimes the question bank might throw in a few extra, so you could see up to 64. You get 120 minutes, 2 full hours to do it.
2 hours seems generous.
It is. Most people who are well prepared finish in under an hour. To pass, you need a 70%, which means you have to get at least 42 questions right. Time is rarely the problem. It's all about the knowledge.
Okay, let's talk about that knowledge, because let's be honest, some of the content feels so disconnected from flying a modern drone. Like, why do I have to know the rules for flying over some empty field in Montana when I'm just shooting videos of vineyards in California?
That's the perfect question, and it gets us into the core content of the exam and the why behind those weird questions. The FAA basically filters your knowledge through 3 main subject areas.
And the first one is the biggest. It can be up to half the test.
Sectional charts and airspace. This is the real meat and potatoes of the exam. You have to be able to look at an aviation map, a sectional chart, and understand what every single symbol, color, and line means.
The FAA's logic being,
They want to know that you understand the airspace you're about to fly in, who else might be in it with you, and what permissions you need to get.
so let's make that concrete. Give me an example of something I need to know from one of those charts.
Okay, so you'll see these colored circles around airports. If you see a segmented blue circle, you have to know that means you're looking at Class D airspace. That's typically around a smaller airport that has an active control tower.
And the test question would be what?
It might ask if you can fly there. And you have to know that to fly commercially inside that blue circle, you need prior authorization, which you'd usually get through the LANC system. But if that circle is segment magenta, now you're looking at Class E airspace that starts at the surface. You still need authorization there too. The test doesn't just ask if you need permission, it expects you to identify the type of airspace from the chart.
It's like learning a new language.
It is, and it gets deeper. You'll see these little spiky symbols for obstructions like a tall tower. Next to it, there will be 2 numbers like 1549, 1521.
And I have to know what both of those mean.
You do. 1549 is the height of that tower above mean sea level, or MSL. The number in parentheses, 1521, is its height above ground level, AGL. You need to know both, because your drone's 400-foot ceiling is measured in AGL, but the tower's height is listed in MSL.
So the second big area is the regulations themselves, right? Part 107.
Yep, this part is a little more straightforward for most people. It's just memorizing the operational rules. Your drone has to be under 55 pounds. You can't fly faster than 100 miles per hour. Your max altitude is 400 feet above the ground.
Or 400 feet above a structure if you're inspecting it.
Exactly. Registration rules, and the really important stuff about when and how you have to report an accident to the FAA.
And then there's the third area, the one that gets all the complaints.
Weather and meteorology. This is where you run into those coded reports.
The METARs.
The METARs and the TAFs.
Right.
Look, every modern pilot gets their weather from a great app on their phone, but the FAA insists that you understand these foundational reports because they are the official language of aviation weather.
Okay, let's break one down because this is where the exam just feels so technical. You might see a string of text like KDEN 141-850 roll Z 330-15G25 KT 10SM SCT 040. It just looks like gibberish.
It does, but it's a full weather picture. The test will expect you to pull out one specific piece of information from that string. For example, that 330-15G25 KT part tells you the wind is from 330 degrees at 15 knots, with gusts up to 25 knots.
Knots, not miles per hour.
Always knots in aviation. 10 SM means visibility is 10 statute miles. And something like O2M05 gives you the temperature 2 degrees Celsius and the dew point, which is -5 Celsius.
But wait a minute. I'm flying a drone 200 feet up to take a picture of a house. My controller is telling me the wind speed in real time. Why on earth do I need to know the temperature dew point spread?
That is the perfect question, and the answer is kind of twofold. First, it ensures you have a backup. If your fancy app fails, you can pull up the official METAR for a nearby airport and get the raw data. But the bigger reason is that it's part of your induction into that airman mindset. The FAA is saying, you are sharing this sky with airliners and helicopters. You need to speak their language. If you ever have an emergency and need to talk to air traffic control, you need to understand the weather information they're giving you.
So it's about being part of the larger system, not just about my specific flight on a Tuesday afternoon.
Precisely. The other areas on the test are smaller things like weight and balance, emergency procedures, crew resource management for team operations. It's all designed to build that holistic safety foundation.
Okay, so we've studied our charts, we've deciphered our METARs.
Yeah.
We know Part 107 inside and out. It's time to actually go take the test.
Right. Test day logistics.
So, scheduling and cost. Where do you go?
The exams are all administered by a company called TSI. They're a private contractor that the FAA uses for all its knowledge testing. They have testing centers all over the country, usually at airports or flight schools.
And the cost is not trivial.
No, it's about $175. And that fee goes to PSI, not the FAA. And you have to pay it every single time you take the test.
And the failure rate for first-timers is, what, around 15–20%?
Something like that. So if you don't prepare, that cost can add up fast.
The good news is scheduling is pretty easy.
Yeah, it's flexible. You can often get a slot for the next day or sometimes even the same day if a center has an opening.
Now, for the rules on test day, the big one is bring your ID and basically nothing else.
It is a very secure environment. You must have your government-issued photo ID. And again, we can't stress this enough. The name on that ID has to match your IACRA registration perfectly. If it doesn't, they will send you home and you lose your $175.
No phones, no smartwatches.
Nothing. No electronics at all. You can bring a simple 4-function calculator, but honestly, the math is so basic you probably won't need it. And there's one on the computer anyway.
But there's a pro tip. A secret weapon you can bring.
A magnifying glass. The FAA allows it. And the reason is that the test supplement packet, the booklet with all the charts and figures, is sometimes a pretty low-quality printout. A magnifying glass can be a lifesaver for reading those tiny symbols on the sectional charts.
That's a great tip. And the center gives you scratch paper.
Yep. They give you the supplement, scratch paper, and pencils. And you have to give every single piece of it back when you leave.
So you hit submit on the computer, and you find out right away.
Instantly. The screen tells you if you passed or failed. If you passed, the proctor prints out what is basically your golden ticket, the AKTR, the Airman Knowledge Test Report.
And this document is critical.
Absolutely vital. It has your score, your FTN, and the most important piece of data, your exam ID. You cannot apply for your certificate without that exam ID. It's the official proof you passed.
And for people who are serious about this, the AKTR also has something called deficiency codes.
Right. These are codes that correspond to the questions you got wrong. So if you see a code like UAIB, you know you missed a question about airspace classification. It's a roadmap that tells you exactly where your weak spots are for future study.
What if you fail?
If you fail, there's a mandatory 14-day waiting period before you can take it again. You have to pay the fee again, and you need to bring your failed AKTR with you to the retest.
And there's a time limit on a passing score, too, isn't there?
There is. Your passing AKTR is only valid for 24 calendar months. If you pass the test and then wait, say, 2.5 years to apply, that score is expired. You have to start all over.
Assuming you passed, now you can actually apply.
Yeah.
Step 3.
The IACRA application.
Yes. Passing the test is not enough. You have to formally apply to the FAA. So you log back into IACRA. And you might have to be patient here. It can take up to 72 hours for your test results to sync from PSI's system to the FAA's.
Once it's synced, you start a new application. Pilot, then remote pilot. And you'll enter that exam ID from your AKTR into the basis of issuance section. Then you just go through the self-certification questions again. English proficiency, criminal history, physical fitness.
And this is where it gets a little weird again, right? With personal details.
It is. IACRA asks for all this standard airman data, like your eye color, your weight, your height.
I have to ask, I'm sitting on the ground flying a drone. Why does the FAA care what color my eyes are?
It's a totally valid question. It's a legacy issue. IACRA was built decades ago for manned aircraft pilots, and the FAA keeps one single unified database for every certified pilot in the country. Since those fields are mandatory for an airline pilot's license, they're mandatory for a remote pilot's license too, just to keep the database consistent.
So it's a bureaucratic artifact, not a safety requirement for drones.
Exactly. So you fill all that out, you electronically sign the form, which is called Form 8710-1013, and you submit it to the FAA's Airman Registry.
And then comes step 4, the security check.
Right. TSA Reading. Your application immediately goes to the Transportation Security Administration for a security threat assessment, or STA.
And this is basically a background check.
It's a high-level background check. They're making sure you're not on a watch list, that you haven't committed any major disqualifying felonies, especially things related to aviation security or violence.
How long does that take?
Usually about 48 hours, but it can take longer if they have a backlog. Once you're cleared, you'll get an email saying your temporary airman certificate is ready in IACRA. The whole process, from application to this point, usually takes about 7 to 10 business days.
And the second you print that temporary certificate,
you are officially a certified remote pilot in command. That piece of paper is your license. You are legal to fly commercially, and you have to have it with you when you're flying.
Then finally, step 5 is just waiting for the mail.
Pretty much. The prominent plastic card that you can put in your wallet is mailed from the FAA office in Oklahoma City. It usually shows up in about 6 to 8 weeks. It feels more official, but it gives you zero extra privileges over that temporary paper copy.
Okay, so we've got the card, we're certified. Now we get to what you said is the most important concept in professional aviation.
Currency.
The difference between just having the card and actually being legal to fly.
That distinction is everything. Your plastic certificate card, it never really expires. Unless the FAA takes it away, it's yours forever. But your right to act as a pilot, your currency, that absolutely does expire if you don't keep up with your training.
And the FAA uses the 24 calendar month rule for this.
Exactly. It's the same rhythm they use for manned pilot flight reviews. It's all about ensuring your aeronautical knowledge stays fresh.
And that calendar month part is a key detail.
It is. It gives you a little bit of a grace period. So if you pass your exam or you do your recurrent training on, say, July 5th, 2025, your currency doesn't expire on July 5th, 2027. It lasts until the end of that month, July 31st, 2027.
And how you maintain that currency, that changed in a huge way after 2021.
Oh, a massive welcome change. Before 2021, staying current was a real pain. Every 2 years, you had to go back to a PSI testing center, take a recurrent knowledge test, and pay that $175 fee all over again.
That's a huge barrier for a small business owner.
It was a bureaucratic headache. But the good news is they eliminated in-person recurrent testing. Now, to stay current, you just have to complete a free online recurrent training course on the FAA Safety Team website every 24 calendar months.
So it went from being a high-stakes test to a simple knowledge refresher.
Exactly. The focus shifted from retesting old knowledge to making sure you're up to date on new rules and critical safety topics. It's about training, not testing.
And this shift is directly tied to how the regulations evolve. A perfect example is night flying.
Yep. The rules are always changing from no unless you get special permission to yes if you meet these standards.
And before 2021, flying at night was a classic no unless situation.
Right. If you wanted to fly at night outside of that 30-minute civil twilight window, you had to get a specific Part 107.29 daylight waiver.
Which was a whole process in itself.
A huge process. That's our scenario 3. A client wants a night shot. You'd have to stop everything, write up a detailed safety case with all your risk mitigations, submit it to the FAA, and then wait for weeks, sometimes months, for an answer. It was a massive bottleneck.
But the post-2021 update changed all that.
It normalized it completely. Now, you can conduct routine night operations without a waiver as long as you meet 2 conditions. First, you, the pilot, have to have completed the updated knowledge training that specifically covers night operations.
So either the newer initial test or that online recurrent course.
Right. And second, the drone itself has to be equipped with anti-collision lights that are visible for at least 3 statute miles.
So this one change instantly created a new business opportunity for pilots who were current.
It did. It turned an administrative nightmare into a standard capability just by putting the risk mitigation into the training and the equipment.
But this brings us back to that compliance reality check, the ramp check scenario.
Scenario 6. This is where it all comes together. An FAA inspector can walk up to you on a job site and perform a ramp check. They can ask to see your pilot certificate and your proof of recurrent training.
So let's say I got my card 3 years ago. I have it in my wallet. But I forgot to do that free online recurrent course.
In that situation, you are legally certified. The FAA knows you're a pilot, but you are not current. And if you are flying commercially, you are operating in violation of the rules. That distinction is the true challenge for professionals. Compliance is a continuous 24-month cycle.
Okay, now let's shift gears and look north of the border. This is where it gets really interesting, comparing the U.S. system to Canada's.
Yeah, the 2 systems have some really different philosophies.
Canada's journey to their modern rules, which is CR Part 9X, it sounds like it started in the same place as the U.S.
It did. A chaos of mandatory waivers. Before 2019, most commercial work in Canada required what was called a Special Flight Operations Certificate, an SFOC, and you often needed one for every single mission.
The SFOC grind.
That's what operators called it. It was that same problem of having to write a new safety case for routine low-risk jobs over and over again.
So Part 9X was their solution, but they didn't go for a single one-size-fits-all certificate like the U.S. Part 107.
No, they went straight to a tiered system that's explicitly based on the risk level of the flight.
Okay, so what are the tiers?
The first one is for basic operations. This is for flying in uncontrolled airspace far away from people and airports. The minimum age for this is only 14.
And the next level up?
That's advanced operations. This is the one that lets you fly closer to people and, most importantly, allows you to operate in controlled airspace. This requires more knowledge, stricter procedures, and the minimum age is 16.
And they're already planning for the future with a third tier.
They are Level 1 complex operations. This is designed for things like beyond visual line of sight or BVLOS and other complex missions.
So if we compare the exams, the differences are huge, especially when it comes to cost and access.
It's night and day. In the U.S., the Part 107 exam is in person at a PSI center and costs about $175.
And in Canada,
The basic and advanced exams are taken entirely online through their government portal, and they cost about 10 Canadian dollars.
$10 versus $175. That's a massive difference in the financial barrier to entry.
It's a completely different approach. The knowledge standards are different too. The U.S. pass mark is 70%. In Canada, it's 65% for basic, but for the advanced certificate, you need to get an 80%.
80%. That's a high bar. Why so much higher for the advanced?
Because that certificate gives you much higher risk privileges. You're flying closer to people, you're in controlled airspace with manned aircraft. Transport Canada's view is that if you're going to have those privileges, your foundational knowledge has to be rock solid.
But the biggest difference, the really defining feature of the Canadian system, is the practical part.
This is the key philosophical split. To get your advanced certificate in Canada, you have to pass an in-person flight review with a Transport Canada-approved reviewer.
So it's not just a written test. You actually have to prove you can fly.
You do. It's a performance test. The reviewer watches you do basic maneuvers, takeoff, landing, and most importantly, they test your emergency procedures. They'll simulate a flyaway or a system failure to see how you react under pressure.
And the U.S. Part 107 has nothing like that.
Nothing mandatory. Practical skill is just assumed, or it's left up to an employer to verify. Canada bakes that practical demonstration right into the certification process itself.
So you end up with two different kinds of pilots, in a way.
In a way, yeah. A pilot trained under the U.S. system is going to be deeply fluent in reading complex sectional charts and understanding FAA airspace logic. The pilot from the Canadian system is going to be more focused on tiered risk assessment and demonstrate a practical skill.
And a pilot who understands both systems is obviously stronger for it.
Absolutely. They have two complementary sets of safety muscles.
So if Part 107 and Part 9X are the licenses for our current visual line of sight era, where does this all go next?
Well, in the U.S., it's all heading towards what everyone is unofficially calling Part 108. This is the future rule set for beyond visual line of sight, or BVLOS operations.
That's to be for things like long-distance pipeline inspections or automated deliveries.
Exactly, and it's going to build on top of Part 107. The expectation is that it won't be a new certificate, but a new rating or endorsement that you add to your existing remote pilot certificate. It will require extra training, extra knowledge, and almost certainly some kind of performance-based check.
And Canada's already a bit ahead on this front.
They are. They've already formalized their rules for Level 1 complex operations, which is their pathway to standardizing BVLOS.
And this is where we see that future scenario 5, really taking shape. Canada is moving towards something called an RPOC.
An RPAS operator certificate. This is a certificate that's issued to the company, not just the individual pilot. It links three things together into one regulatory package: the pilot's qualifications, the company's safety procedures, and the specific aircraft being used.
So the focus shifts from just the pilot to the safety culture of the entire organization.
That's the future. It's a holistic view of safety.
You know, the most interesting meta-trivia in all of this is how drones forced these massive, slow-moving aviation regulators to suddenly start thinking at the speed of software.
It's true. They were used to certification timelines that took decades for airliners. Suddenly, they had to deal with cybersecurity, data management, digital identity with remote ID, all in a matter of a few years. It was a huge culture shock.
So to wrap up the U.S. process, it's a clear, standardized path. You get your FTN from IACRA, you pass the UAG test at PSI, you get your AKTR, you apply an IACRA, pass the TSA vetting, and then you get your temporary and then permanent certificate. And the core logic in both countries is the same. It's about identity, knowledge, and maintaining that 24-month recency.
We established that your physical card basically lasts forever unless the FAA takes it away. But the critical concept is currency.
And that's where the real challenge is for professionals. It's not about passing that initial test. It's about recognizing that the line between being certified and being compliant is those 2 hours you spend every 2 years on the free recurrent training.
If you fail to do that, even with the card in your pocket, you're flying illegally.
Exactly. The system is built on trust, but it's verified by your knowledge currency.
So we'll leave you with a final thought on that. We talked a lot about the $175 cost to take the initial test. But what's the true cost? Not of getting the card, but of letting your currency lapse. The cost is the massive risk. It's the risk of an FAA enforcement action, which can mean tens of thousands of dollars in fines. Or maybe even worse, it's the risk of your multi-million-dollar insurance claim being denied after an incident, all because you weren't legally current at the time. Compliance isn't about the test fee, it's about eliminating operational risk.
We hope this deep dive helps you set up a solid system to keep track of your certifications and keep your compliance completely airtight.
That's a wrap on today's mission, Commander. See above, go beyond, get ahead. For more training, tools, and intel, head to skycommander.ca. If you learned something new, share it, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star debrief.